In 1979, a group of MIT students walk into a Las Vegas casino with nothing but a deck of cards worth of memorized numbers in their heads. And by the end of the weekend, they walk out with more money than most of them will earn in a year of tuition. This isn't luck. It isn't a system a casino built to fail. It's real mathematics, applied so precisely that for a brief period in history, a small group of students turned blackjack into one of the only reliably beatable games in the entire building. Here's the part that surprises most people. Card counting isn't cheating, and it isn't magic. It's arithmetic. In blackjack, unlike almost every other casino game, the odds shift slightly depending on which cards have already been dealt. When a deck is rich in high cards, tens and aces, the player's odds actually tip slightly in their favor, because those cards are more likely to bust the dealer and pay out blackjack at better odds. When a deck is rich in low cards, the odds swing back toward the house. Counting cards simply means tracking that shift in real time and betting small when the odds favor the house, then betting big the moment the odds tip toward you. The technique itself had existed since the 1960s, first published by a mathematician named Edward Thorpe, using early computer simulations to prove rigorously that it worked. But knowing the theory and executing it under casino lighting, casino noise, and a dealer moving cards every few seconds is a completely different problem. That's the part MIT actually solved. Rather than relying on one genius counting alone, a group of students formalized something closer to a small hedge fund than a gambling habit. They raised investor capital, calculated a precise bankroll needed to survive the statistical swings of the game, and built an actual team structure with clearly defined roles. Most players at the table were spotters, placing minimum bets and quietly tracking the count without drawing attention, doing nothing that looked remotely skilled. The moment a table's count turned favorable, a spotter would signal, using a prearranged word or gesture, and a completely different player would casually wander over. This player was called the big player. They'd sit down acting mildly drunk, overconfident, or simply rich and careless, place enormous bets exactly when the maths favored them, and then wander off again once the count turned bad. To a pit boss watching the floor, it never looked like a system. It looked like a lucky idiot with too much money. This mattered enormously because casinos aren't actually looking for people who count cards. They're looking for people who behave like they're counting cards, quiet, focused, betting proportionally to the count in a mathematically obvious pattern. By splitting the counting and the betting across two entirely different people, the team made the pattern itself nearly invisible. The money wasn't small. At the team's peak through the 1980s and 90s, hundreds of students, MIT alumni, and other recruited players cycled through the operation, and estimates suggest the various MIT-linked blackjack teams won tens of millions of dollars from casinos over roughly 2 decades. This wasn't a one-off lucky trip. It was a repeatable, mathematically provable edge, run with the discipline of an actual investment fund, complete with shareholder-style payouts to the students who'd financed the bankroll. Casinos, for their part, weren't stupid, and they fought back the only way they legally could. Card counting itself isn't illegal anywhere. It's just arithmetic happening inside someone's head, and no law in any jurisdiction prohibits thinking clearly. So casinos did the only thing available to them. They simply refused entry. Security teams, coordinated through a private company called Griffin Investigations, built and shared physical description files and photographs of suspected counters across almost every casino in Las Vegas. Get identified once, and you could find yourself quietly escorted out of properties you'd never even visited before, recognized purely from a shared photograph. This is where the story stops being pure mathematics and becomes something closer to an actual heist film. Team members adopted entire false identities to keep playing. Wigs, fake accents, entirely different personas built around different genders, ages, and nationalities than their own. Also, a player blacklisted under one face could simply walk back in under another. Some members were followed to their cars. Some were physically detained by security in back rooms, a legal gray area that eventually led to real courtroom battles over whether casinos could forcibly search or restrain a guest who'd broken no law. And here's the twist that makes this genuinely different from most gambling stories. The players didn't lose because the math stopped working. Card counting still works today, provably, mathematically, in any casino using a standard shoe. What ended the MIT team's dominance wasn't bad luck or a flawed system. It was casinos changing the game itself, introducing continuous shuffling machines that reshuffle the deck after every hand, making a running count mathematically meaningless, and using far more shoes dealt from far deeper multi-deck shoes specifically to blunt the advantage a count provides. In other words, the house didn't beat the players by being smarter at blackjack. It changed the rules of the game itself until the exploit no longer existed, which might be the most honest lesson in the entire story. In a system built by the house, even a real, provable, mathematically sound edge only survives for exactly as long as the house decides to allow it.